The acrid smell of stale coffee and printer toner filled my cramped home office as I squinted at the laptop screen, adjusting the brightness for the 100th time that hour. My fingers hovered over the keyboard, trembling slightly from exhaustion and too much caffeine. The design mock-up stared back at me, taunting me with its mediocrity. I'd been working for 16 hours straight, trying to salvage what was left of my reputation after Derek had systematically destroyed every professional connection I'd built over 5 years. The weak November sunlight filtering through my apartment's single window cast long shadows across the scattered papers and empty takeout containers that decorated my desk. I could hear Mrs. Chen's television through the paper-thin walls, the familiar soundtrack of her afternoon soap operas, a constant reminder of how far I'd fallen. The studio apartment in the East District was a universe away from the spacious loft I'd shared with Derek before everything collapsed. My phone buzzed against the desk, the vibration sending a spike of anxiety through my chest. Another invoice, another reminder that I was 3 weeks behind on rent. I ignored it, forcing myself to focus on the color palette in front of me. Midnight blue to deep purple, transitioning through. What? My creative well felt bone dry, scraped clean by the relentless grind of survival. Just finish this one, I whispered to myself, my voice hoarse from disuse. I'd barely spoken to anyone in days. One more client, one more paycheck, then maybe. Maybe what? Maybe I'd have enough saved to hire the lawyer I desperately needed. Maybe I'd finally be able to afford the evaluation that family court required before I could even petition for visitation rights. Maybe. The word had become a bitter mantra, a prayer to a universe that seemed determined to keep grinding me down. My stomach growled, reminding me I'd skipped lunch again. The protein bar I'd eaten for breakfast at 6 a.m. was a distant memory. I pushed away from the desk, my lower back protesting the movement. The studio apartment was small enough that I could reach the kitchenette in 5 steps. I filled a glass with tap water, the metallic taste familiar and unwelcome, and forced myself to drink it slowly. Through the window, I could see the corner bodega where I bought my groceries, the laundromat where I spent Sunday mornings, the bus stop where I waited in all weather because I'd sold my car 6 months ago. This had become my world, small and suffocating, measured in city blocks and counting pennies. The laptop chimed with an incoming message. My client, probably wondering why I hadn't delivered the revisions yet. I returned to the desk, reading the terse email with mounting dread. They wanted changes. Again. The 4th round of revisions on a project that was supposed to be straightforward. I knew what this meant. I'd seen it before. They were stalling, looking for reasons to reject the final product so they wouldn't have to pay the full amount. Derek had taught them well. After he'd spread rumors about my unreliability and creative limitations throughout our shared professional network, every client treated me with suspicion. Every deadline became a test I was expected to fail. Every revision request felt like another trap. I typed out a professional response, agreeing to the changes, promising delivery by tomorrow. My fingers moved automatically, muscle memory from years of client management. The words were hollow, a performance I'd perfected, grateful, accommodating, eager to please. Nothing like the designer I used to be, the one who commanded premium rates and had clients competing for her availability. The afternoon bled into evening. I worked through dinner, subsisting on crackers and the last of my peanut butter. The apartment grew dark around me, the only light coming from my laptop screen. My eyes burned, and I knew I should stop, should rest, should take care of myself. But rest was a luxury I couldn't afford. Every hour not working was money not earned, ground lost in the impossible race to reclaim my life. It was nearly 9 p.m. when I finally saved the file and closed my laptop. My neck cracked audibly as I rolled my shoulders, trying to work out the knots that had formed from hours of hunching over the keyboard. I needed air. Needed to move. Needed to remember what it felt like to exist in the world, instead of this claustrophobic bubble of failure and desperation. I pulled on my jacket, the same worn denim I'd been wearing for 3 years, and grabbed my keys. The corner store would still be open. I could buy something fresh for once, maybe even splurge on a real meal instead of crackers and canned soup. The small victory felt pathetic, even as I tried to embrace it. The evening air was crisp, carrying the first hints of winter. I breathed deeply, letting the cold fill my lungs, trying to clear the fog of exhaustion. The sidewalk was relatively empty, just a few other residents returning from work, faces illuminated by phone screens as they walked. I'd made it half a block when I heard it. That voice, the one that still haunted my nightmares, smooth and confident, with an edge of mockery that made my skin crawl. Well, well, if it isn't Nora Sullivan, still slumming it in the East District, I see. I froze, every muscle in my body tensing. Derek stood under the streetlight ahead, looking exactly as he always had, polished and perfectly groomed in an expensive charcoal suit. His dark hair was artfully styled, his smile sharp as a knife. And beside him, draped on his arm like an accessory, was a blonde woman in a designer dress that probably cost more than my month's rent. Derek. I forced the word out, keeping my voice level. I didn't know you frequented this neighborhood. I don't. His smile widened, predatory. But I heard through the grapevine that you'd ended up here, and I had to see it for myself. Had to confirm that the great Nora Sullivan had really fallen this far. The blonde woman giggled, a sound like breaking glass. Is this her? The one you told me about? The designer who couldn't handle the pressure? I wanted to run, wanted to turn around and retreat to my apartment, to the safety of familiar walls and locked doors. But my feet remained planted, some stubborn part of me refusing to give him the satisfaction of seeing me flee. I'm doing fine, Derek. Thanks for your concern. The lie tasted bitter. Fine? He laughed, the sound echoing off the buildings. You call this fine? Look at you, Nora. You look like you haven't slept in weeks. When's the last time you bought new clothes or got a decent haircut? He took a step closer, and I fought the urge to back away. This is what happens when people overestimate their abilities, when they think they can make it on talent alone without the right connections. The connections he'd systematically severed, the opportunities he'd poisoned with carefully placed words and strategic rumors, but I couldn't say any of that. Couldn't give him ammunition. I should go, I said, moving to step around him. He shifted, blocking my path. Not so fast. I'm curious about something. His eyes gleamed with malicious interest. I heard you've been trying to get visitation rights, trying to see your son. How's that going? The mention of Noah sent ice through my veins. That's none of your business. It's everyone's business when you're making a spectacle of yourself. Do you really think any court is going to give you access to that child? Look at you. You can barely take care of yourself. What judge would believe you're fit to be around a kid? The blonde woman made a sympathetic noise. She has a child? Oh, that's so sad. The poor thing having a mother like this. Something inside me cracked. You don't know anything about it, I said, my voice shaking despite my efforts to control it. You don't know what it's like to what? Derek interrupted. To fail? To lose everything because you weren't good enough? I know exactly what that's like, Nora. I watched it happen to you in real time. I watched you fall apart when the pressure got too high. When you realized you couldn't compete at the level I operate at. The pressure you engineered, I wanted to scream. The sabotage you orchestrated to destroy me. But the words stuck in my throat. The question is, Derek continued, leaning in close enough that I could smell his cologne, expensive and cloying. Who exactly are you planning to trap into saving you this time? What poor fool is going to fall for your act and try to rescue the damsel in distress? I'm not trying to trap anyone, I managed. I'm handling my own life. Are you? He gestured at the surrounding neighborhood, the shabby storefronts and cracked sidewalks. Because from where I'm standing, you're barely surviving, and that's not going to change. You know why? Because you burned your bridges, made enemies of everyone who could have helped you. That was your choice, Nora. You chose pride over pragmatism, and now you're paying for it. He'd twisted it, as he always did, made my refusal to compromise my ethics sound like stubbornness, made his betrayal sound like my failure. So tell me, Derek said, his voice dropping to mock intimacy. Who are you going to marry, Nora? Who's going to be desperate or stupid enough to take on a washed-up designer with no prospects and a kid she can't even see? I'm genuinely curious. The words hit like physical blows, each one carefully chosen, precisely aimed at my deepest insecurities. I felt the familiar burning behind my eyes, the warning sign of tears I refused to shed in front of him. Leave me alone, Derek. My voice came out smaller than I intended. Or what? He laughed again. You'll report me? Sue me? With what money, Nora? We both know you can't afford a lawyer. Can't afford much of anything, can you? A sleek black car glided to a stop at the curb beside us. The windows were tinted so dark I couldn't see inside, but something about the vehicle radiated wealth and power. The kind of car that didn't belong in this neighborhood any more than Derek did. The back door opened, and a man emerged. Tall, broad-shouldered, dressed in a charcoal suit that made Derek's expensive outfit look cheap by comparison. Dark hair, perfectly styled. Steel gray eyes that swept over the scene with cold assessment. I'd never seen him before, but something about his presence commanded immediate attention. Is there a problem here? His voice was deep, controlled, carrying an authority that made Derek actually step back. No problem, Derek said, recovering his composure. Just catching up with an old friend. The stranger's eyes moved to me, and I felt the weight of his gaze like a physical thing. Is that true? Are you friends? I should have said yes, should have diffused the situation and escaped. But something in those gray eyes made me tell the truth. No. Then perhaps, the stranger said, his attention shifting back to Derek with laser focus. You should move along. The lady seems uncomfortable with your attention. Derek bristled. And who the hell are you? Someone who dislikes seeing women harassed on public streets. The stranger's tone was mild, but there was steel underneath. I suggest you continue on your way. For a moment, Derek looked like he might argue. Then something in the stranger's expression made him reconsider. He shot me a venomous look. This isn't over, Nora. You can't hide behind white knights forever. He stalked away, the blonde woman tottering after him on her high heels. I watched them go, my heart still hammering against my ribs. Thank you, I said to the stranger, my voice unsteady. You didn't have to do that. No, he agreed, his eyes still on me. But I wanted to. He extended his hand. Nathan Cross. I stared at his hand for a moment before taking it. His grip was firm, warm. Nora Sullivan. I know. At my startled look, he smiled slightly. I've been looking for you, actually. I have a proposition that might interest you. I pulled my hand back from Nathan Cross's grip, suddenly aware of how close we were standing on the darkening street. His presence felt overwhelming, like standing too near a fire, the heat radiating off him in waves of controlled power and danger barely contained beneath that expensive suit. You've been looking for me? The words came out shakier than I intended. I don't understand. We've never met. Not formally, no. His gray eyes held mine, unblinking. But I've been aware of you for some time. Your work, specifically. The campaign you did for Meridian Hotels 3 years ago caught my attention. Exceptional design work. 3 years ago, when I was still at the top of my game, still commanding premium rates, still confident in my abilities, before Derek had systematically dismantled everything I'd built. The mention of that campaign felt like touching a bruise that had never quite healed. That was a long time ago, I said carefully. My circumstances have changed since then. Yes, I'm aware of that too. He tilted his head slightly, studying me with an intensity that made my skin prickle. Your ex-partner Derek Morrison has been quite thorough in sabotaging your reputation, spreading rumors about missed deadlines, creative disputes, unprofessional behavior. All lies, of course, but effective ones. The casual way he stated it, as if discussing the weather rather than the destruction of my career, left me momentarily speechless. How do you know they're lies? I make it my business to know the truth about people who interest me. He gestured toward the black car still idling at the curb. This conversation would be better continued somewhere more private. May I offer you dinner? There's a restaurant nearby, very discreet. Every instinct I had screamed warning. Strange man, expensive car, too much knowledge about my life. This was exactly the kind of situation I'd been taught to avoid. And yet, something about Nathan Cross's directness, the way he'd intervened with Derek without hesitation, made me hesitate instead of immediately refusing. I don't think that's a good idea, I said finally. I appreciate your help just now, but I don't know you, Mr. Cross. Nathan. His lips curved into something that wasn't quite a smile. And you're right to be cautious, so let me be direct. I have a business proposition for you, one that would solve several of your current problems, including your financial situation and your ongoing custody battle for your son. My breath caught. How do you know about Noah? As I said, I make it my business to know. He pulled a business card from his jacket pocket and offered it to me. The cardstock was heavy, expensive. Nathan Cross, it read simply, followed by a phone number. No company name, no title. I'm not asking you to trust me blindly. Take the card, research me. You'll find I'm exactly what I appear to be, a businessman with extensive real estate holdings and the resources to back up any claims I make. I took the card, my fingers trembling slightly as they closed around it. What kind of proposition? The kind that requires discretion and a longer conversation than we can have on a street corner. He checked his watch, a platinum piece that probably cost more than my entire year's rent. I have a reservation at Le Bernardin in an hour. Join me. Hear what I have to say. If you're not interested after that, you walk away with no obligation and a meal significantly better than whatever you were planning to eat tonight. Le Bernardin, one of the most expensive restaurants in the city. The kind of place I used to go with Derek when we were celebrating a particularly successful campaign, back when I could afford such luxuries without thinking twice. I'm not dressed for Le Bernardin, I said, gesturing at my worn jeans and faded jacket. You're fine. His tone suggested the restaurant would make accommodations for anyone he brought. The question is whether you're curious enough to hear me out. I should have said no, should have taken his card, thanked him politely, and returned to my apartment to research him from the safety of my laptop. But curiosity warred with caution, and beneath both was a desperate hope that maybe, just maybe, this was the opportunity I'd been waiting for. 1 hour, I heard myself say. I'll listen to your proposition, but I'm not agreeing to anything. Fair enough. He opened the car door, gesturing for me to enter. Shall we? The interior of the car was as luxurious as I'd expected. Butter-soft leather seats, ambient lighting, the faint scent of expensive cologne, and new car smell. Nathan slid in beside me, maintaining a respectful distance as the driver, a broad-shouldered man in a dark suit, pulled smoothly away from the curb. I clutched my small crossbody purse in my lap, suddenly hyper-aware of how out of place I was in this environment. My fingers found the worn strap, rubbing the frayed fabric as a nervous habit I'd developed over the past year. Nathan noticed, his gaze tracking the movement before returning to my face. Nervous? He asked. Cautious, I corrected. There's a difference. Indeed there is. He settled back against the seat, his posture relaxed, but somehow still radiating that controlled energy. Tell me about your son. Noah, correct? He's 4 years old. The mention of my baby, not a baby anymore, but still my baby in my heart, sent a sharp pain through my chest. I'd rather not discuss Noah with someone I just met. Understandable, but relevant to my proposition, I'm afraid. He pulled out a phone, tapped the screen a few times, then showed it to me. This is what I know. After your divorce from James Sullivan, his family used their considerable wealth and connections to secure full custody. You were granted supervised visitation twice a month, but even that has been progressively restricted. The last time you saw your son was 3 months ago. The information was accurate, painfully so. I stared at the screen without really seeing it, fighting the wave of emotion that always came when I thought about Noah's confused face the last time we'd said goodbye. The way he'd asked when I was coming back to live with him, not understanding why Mommy couldn't stay. James's family claims you're unstable, Nathan continued, his voice softening slightly. That your financial situation makes you unfit to provide proper care. They've submitted evidence of your declining professional reputation, your living situation, your lack of stable income. All carefully orchestrated to paint you as an unfit mother. They're wrong, I whispered. I love Noah. Everything I'm doing, all of this struggling, it's to get him back. I believe you. He put the phone away. Which is why I'm making this offer. The car glided through traffic, the city lights blurring past the tinted windows. We were heading uptown, toward the restaurant district where people like Nathan Cross belonged, and people like me, in my current state, did not. What offer? I asked, though part of me already suspected I knew. Men like Nathan Cross didn't seek out struggling designers out of altruism. They wanted something, and whatever it was would come with strings attached. I need a wife, he said simply. Not permanently. A business arrangement, shall we say. 2 years, possibly 3. In exchange, you would receive a substantial financial settlement, enough to hire the best family lawyers and demonstrate financial stability to the court. You would live in comfort, have access to resources that would help rebuild your professional reputation, and most importantly, you would have my support in regaining custody of your son. The proposition hung in the air between us, shocking in its directness. I stared at him, trying to process what he'd just said. You want to? Marry me? Why? This doesn't make any sense. It makes perfect sense from a business perspective. He met my gaze steadily. I have certain ventures that require a more legitimate public image, a stable marriage, a respectable wife. These things open doors that remain closed to confirmed bachelors, particularly those with my reputation. What reputation is that? His smile was cold. The kind that suggests my business interests aren't entirely above board. The kind that makes investors nervous and regulators suspicious. A wife provides cover, respectability, and you, Nora, are perfect for the role. Because I'm desperate, I said flatly. Because you're intelligent, professional, and have enough at stake to ensure your discretion. He leaned forward slightly. I'm not offering this out of charity. This is a mutually beneficial arrangement. You need money and stability to fight for your son. I need the appearance of a conventional marriage. We both get what we want. The car pulled to a stop in front of Le Bernardin. Through the window, I could see the elegant entrance, the well-dressed diners visible through the large windows. A different world, one I'd been exiled from. Think about it over dinner, Nathan said as the driver opened his door. No pressure. Just consider the possibilities. He exited the car with fluid grace, then offered his hand to help me out. I took it automatically, my mind still reeling from his proposition. The evening air felt colder than before, or perhaps that was just the shock working its way through my system. Inside the restaurant, we were greeted with immediate deference. The maitre d' recognized Nathan, ushering us to a private table in the back corner, away from the other diners. The space was intimate, candles casting soft shadows across the pristine white tablecloth. I felt acutely aware of my casual clothing, my lack of makeup, my unpolished appearance in this refined environment. "Wine?" Nathan asked once we were seated, the menus presented with practiced efficiency. "Water is fine," I said, my throat dry. I need to keep a clear head for this conversation. He nodded to the sommelier, ordering something in French that I didn't catch. When we were alone again, he folded his hands on the table and gave me his full attention. "You have questions," he observed. "Ask them." "All of them?" I laughed, the sound slightly hysterical. "I don't even know where to start. Why me specifically? How did you even know about my situation? What exactly would this arrangement entail? What aren't you telling me about your business interests?" "In order," he said calmly. "You, because I've followed your work and believe you have the intelligence and composure necessary for this role. Your situation, because I make it my business to identify people who might be useful to me. The arrangement would entail living as my wife publicly while maintaining separate private lives. And as for my business interests, let's just say they involve real estate development in areas where local authorities prefer to work with family men rather than single operators." The waiter appeared with our drinks, Nathan's wine and my water. He also presented the evening specials, his French accent adding to the surreal quality of the moment. Nathan ordered for both of us without consulting me, a presumption that should have annoyed me but somehow didn't. I was too overwhelmed to care about menu selections. "This is insane," I said once we were alone again. "You're asking me to marry you, a complete stranger, for business purposes. That's not how marriage works." "Marriage is a legal contract," Nathan replied. "We would simply be using that contract for our mutual benefit rather than romantic reasons. People have entered arrangements like this throughout history. And what happens after 2 or 3 years? We just get divorced and go our separate ways?" "Precisely. With a generous settlement for you that ensures your financial security going forward. You'd be free to rebuild your career, maintain custody of your son, start fresh with the kind of resources you haven't had access to in years." It sounded too good to be true, which meant it probably was. "What's the catch?" "There's always a catch with offers like this." Nathan took a sip of his wine, considering his answer. "The catch is that you would be entering my world, a world that isn't always safe or simple. There are people who might view you as a target, leverage to use against me. You would need protection, discretion, and the ability to navigate complex social situations without revealing the true nature of our arrangement." "You're talking about danger," I said slowly. "Real danger. I'm talking about reality. My business interests attract attention, not all of it friendly. But I have extensive security measures in place. You and Noah would be protected." The mention of Noah made my heart clench. "You'd really help me get my son back?" "I would dedicate whatever resources necessary." His gray eyes held mine. "Good lawyers, private investigators to counter the Sullivan family's narrative, financial stability to demonstrate your capability as a mother. Everything you need to win." The waiter returned with our first course, some elaborate seafood preparation that probably cost more than my weekly grocery budget. I stared at it, my appetite gone despite the gnawing hunger I'd felt earlier. "How long do I have to decide?" I asked. "I need an answer within 48 hours." Nathan began eating with precise, controlled movements. "After that, I'll need to explore other options. Other desperate women you can use for your business cover." "Other candidates, yes." He didn't deny it, or apologize for the transactional nature of his offer. "But you're my first choice. You have the qualities I'm looking for, and your son provides additional motivation for you to take this seriously. I picked up my fork, forcing myself to taste the food. It was exquisite, perfectly prepared, probably the best meal I'd had in over a year. The contrast between this and my usual diet of crackers and canned soup was almost painful. What would living together actually look like? I asked. You mentioned separate private lives. You would have your own suite in my penthouse, your own space, your own privacy. We would maintain the appearance of a conventional marriage in public, certain social events, occasional dinners out, enough to establish the narrative. But behind closed doors, you would be free to live as you choose. And what about physical expectations? The question made heat rise to my face, but I needed to know. None. His answer was immediate and definitive. This is a business arrangement, Nora. I'm not interested in forcing intimacy where none exists naturally. Something about his phrasing, where none exists naturally, suggested he thought such intimacy might develop over time. I pushed the thought away, focusing on the practical aspects. I'd want everything in writing, I said. A contract specifying exactly what's expected, what resources would be provided, what happens if either of us wants out early. Of course, I'd have my lawyers draw up a comprehensive agreement. You'd be free to have your own legal counsel review it before signing. With what money? You just witnessed Derek point out that I can't afford a lawyer. Nathan pulled out his phone again, typed briefly, and set it down. I've just transferred $10,000 to cover initial legal consultation and any other expenses you might need while making your decision. Consider it a good faith gesture. I stared at him, shocked. You can't just transfer money to someone you barely know. I can do whatever I want with my money. He returned to his meal. And I'm investing in a potential business partner. Check your phone. You'll find the funds have already arrived. With shaking hands, I pulled out my phone and checked my banking app. Sure enough, there was a new deposit. $10,000. More money than I'd seen in my account in over a year. Money that could pay my rent, buy groceries, maybe even cover one of the legal consultations I desperately needed. This is real, I whispered, more to myself than to him. You're serious about this. I'm always serious about business. Nathan set down his fork and leaned back, studying me with those penetrating gray eyes. The question is whether you're serious about getting your son back. Because I can make that happen, Nora. I can give you everything you need to fight the Sullivan family and win. All you have to do is say yes. I barely slept that night. After Nathan's driver dropped me back at my apartment, I'd spent hours pacing the small space, my mind churning through everything he'd said. The business card sat on my desk like a ticking bomb. Nathan Cross's name embossed in simple black letters that somehow conveyed more power than any flashy design could have achieved. The $10,000 sat in my account, real and tangible. I'd checked 3 times to make sure it wasn't a mistake, some digital error that would evaporate by morning. But it remained, a concrete demonstration that Nathan Cross was exactly what he claimed to be, a man with resources and the willingness to use them. By dawn, I was back at my laptop, researching everything I could find about Nathan Cross. What I discovered both reassured and terrified me in equal measure. He was legitimate, at least on the surface. Cross Development owned dozens of properties throughout the city, high-rise apartments, commercial buildings, luxury hotels. His net worth was estimated in the hundreds of millions, though the exact figure was unclear. He appeared in business publications occasionally, always photographed at charity events or groundbreaking ceremonies, always alone. No wife, no long-term girlfriend, no public relationships at all. But beneath the legitimate business empire, there were whispers. Connections to city officials that seemed too cozy. Real estate deals that happened impossibly fast, cutting through red tape that stopped other developers cold. Projects in neighborhoods where other investors feared to tread. areas controlled by organized crime families. Nothing concrete, nothing provable, just a pattern of success that suggested Nathan Cross had access to channels most businessmen didn't. He was dangerous. That much was clear. The kind of man who operated in gray areas where law and order became negotiable. And he wanted to marry me. My phone buzzed with an incoming message. Unknown number, but I knew who it was before I even opened it. Good morning. I trust you slept well. My lawyer is available today at 2 p.m. if you'd like to review the proposed contract. Address attached. No obligation. I stared at the message, my thumb hovering over the delete button. This was my chance to back out, to thank him politely for the dinner and the money, and to return to my difficult but familiar life. The safe choice. The smart choice. Then I opened my photos, scrolling to the folder I'd labeled simply N. Pictures of Noah from happier times. His 3rd birthday party, frosting smeared across his grinning face. The day we'd visited the aquarium, his eyes wide with wonder at the sharks. Halloween, dressed as a tiny dinosaur, holding my hand as we walked through the neighborhood. The last photo in the folder was from 3 months ago, our final supervised visit. Noah looked confused in the picture, uncertain. The joy that had characterized our earlier photos was muted, replaced by a wariness that broke my heart. He didn't understand why Mommy only visited sometimes now. Didn't understand why strangers had to watch us when we were together. Didn't understand that his father's family was trying to erase me from his life. I typed a response before I could reconsider. I'll be there. The law office was in a glass tower in Midtown, the kind of building where every surface gleamed, and the receptionist's suit probably cost more than my monthly rent. I'd changed into the one professional outfit I still owned, a navy dress that was slightly too loose now after months of irregular meals. I'd attempted makeup to hide the dark circles under my eyes, but the mirror had shown me the truth. I looked exactly like what I was, a woman hanging on by her fingernails. Ms. Sullivan? The receptionist smiled with practiced professionalism. Mr. Cross is expecting you. Conference room 3, down the hall to your left. Nathan stood as I entered, dressed in another immaculate suit, this one charcoal gray that made his eyes look like polished steel. A woman in her 50s sat beside him, her silver hair pulled back severely, her expression shrewd and assessing. Nora, thank you for coming. Nathan gestured to the empty chair across from him. This is Margaret Chen, my attorney. She's prepared the initial contract for your review. Margaret slid a thick document across the polished table. Ms. Sullivan, I want to be clear that while I represent Mr. Cross's interests, I've ensured this contract is fair to both parties. You're welcome to have your own counsel review it, and I encourage you to do so. I pulled the document closer, scanning the first page. The legal language was dense, but the terms were surprisingly straightforward. Marriage for a period of 2 to 3 years. Separate living quarters within Nathan's residence. A monthly allowance of $15,000 for personal expenses. Full legal and financial support for custody proceedings regarding Noah Sullivan. A settlement of $5 million upon completion of the contract term. $5 million. The number seemed absurd, life-changing, impossible. I looked up at Nathan. This is an enormous amount of money. It's fair compensation for what I'm asking of you. He leaned forward slightly. You would be putting your life on hold, living a lie, exposing yourself to potential danger. That's worth significant compensation. The custody support clause is particularly comprehensive, Margaret added, her finger pointing to a section in the middle of the document. Mr. Cross has agreed to retain the best family law attorneys in the state, cover all court costs and fees, and provide character references and financial documentation as needed. He's also agreed to make his home available for custody evaluations, demonstrating a stable family environment. My hands trembled as I turned the pages. It was everything I needed. Everything I'd been fighting for alone, suddenly offered on a silver platter. What if I change my mind after we're married? What if I can't do this? There's a termination clause, Margaret said, flipping to the relevant page. Either party can exit the arrangement with 90 days' notice. You would receive a prorated settlement based on time served, plus full custody support continues regardless of the marriage status. Mr. Cross has agreed that once he commits to helping you regain custody of your son, that commitment stands, even if the marriage ends prematurely. I looked at Nathan, searching his face for any sign of deception. Why would you agree to that? If I leave after 6 months, you've gained nothing but lost millions. I'm betting on your determination to see it through for your son's sake. His expression was unreadable. And if I'm wrong, I'll absorb the loss. I can afford it. The casual way he discussed losing millions of dollars reinforced just how different our worlds were. To him, this was a calculated business risk. To me, it was my entire life, my son's future, everything I'd been desperately clawing toward for over a year. I need to understand something, I said, setting the contract down. Last night you mentioned danger, that people might target me because of you. I need specifics. What kind of danger are we talking about? Nathan exchanged a glance with Margaret before responding. My business interests sometimes conflict with other parties who aren't accustomed to hearing no. I've made enemies, people who would happily use anyone close to me as leverage. There have been threats in the past, though never acted upon because I maintain extensive security. Threats. The word sat heavy in the air. Against previous girlfriends, business partners, associates, Nathan said carefully. No one was ever harmed. The threats were neutralized before they could develop into actual danger. How do you neutralize threats? I needed to know what I was getting into. What does that actually mean? His gray eyes held mine steadily. It means I have people who handle problems before they become crises. Security professionals, lawyers, occasionally law enforcement when appropriate. I don't involve myself in violence, Nora, but I also don't allow threats to go unanswered. The implication was clear. He had connections, resources, ways of dealing with problems that existed outside normal legal channels. The kind of power that came with its own darkness. There's something else you should know, Nathan continued. Your ex-husband's family, the Sullivans, they have their own connections, their own resources. When we move forward with custody proceedings, they'll fight back hard. They might dig into your life, my life, looking for ammunition. There will be scrutiny, possibly media attention. You need to be prepared for that. I'd already experienced the Sullivan family's version of warfare, the way they'd systematically dismantled my credibility, isolated me from support systems, used their money and influence to paint me as an unfit mother. The thought of going up against them with actual resources on my side was both thrilling and terrifying. I want to see where I'd be living, I said. Before I agree to anything, I need to see the actual space, understand what daily life would look like. Nathan nodded as if he'd expected this. Of course, we can go now if you're available. Margaret, can you give us a few hours? Take all the time you need. Margaret began gathering the contract copies. Ms. Sullivan, I'll prepare a final version for your signature. In the meantime, please have any attorney you choose review this draft. My contact information is on the cover page if they have questions. 20 minutes later, I was back in Nathan's car, watching the city slide past as we drove toward the Upper West Side. The neighborhood shifted gradually from commercial to residential, the buildings growing more elegant, the streets cleaner and quieter. We pulled up to a pre-war building with an ornate facade, a doorman in a crisp uniform rushing to open the car door. "Good afternoon, Mr. Cross," he said with obvious respect, then nodded politely at me. "Ma'am." The lobby was all marble and brass, the kind of understated luxury that whispered old money. A private elevator required a key card to operate, carrying us smoothly upward. Nathan stood beside me, close enough that I could smell his cologne, Something woody and expensive that probably had a ridiculous name and cost hundreds of dollars per bottle. The elevator opened directly into a penthouse that took my breath away. Floor-to-ceiling windows offered panoramic views of the city and Central Park beyond. The space was enormous, decorated in clean lines and neutral colors, with carefully selected art pieces that looked like they belonged in a museum. Everything gleamed, from the hardwood floors to the chrome fixtures in the open-concept kitchen. "This is the main living area," Nathan said, leading me through the space. "Kitchen, dining room, my office is through that door, down this hallway." He guided me down a wide corridor. 3 bedrooms, each with an ensuite bathroom. "This one would be yours." He opened a door, revealing a suite that was larger than my entire current apartment. A king-sized bed dominated the space, dressed in crisp white linens. A sitting area with a comfortable-looking sofa faced more windows overlooking the park. The bathroom was visible through an open door, all marble and glass, with a soaking tub that could easily fit 2 people. "You'd have complete privacy," Nathan said. "The door locks from the inside. I would never enter without your permission. This would be your sanctuary." I walked to the windows, looking out at the view. Central Park stretched below, the autumn trees a tapestry of red and gold. People walked the paths, tiny from this height, living their normal lives while I stood in this impossible luxury, contemplating an impossible choice. The guest room next door could be converted into a bedroom for Noah, Nathan continued. "When you have visitation, or hopefully custody, he'd have his own space here. Whatever toys, decorations, furniture you want, we'll arrange it." The mention of Noah made my throat tight. I imagined him here, safe and happy, running through these spacious rooms, looking out these windows with wonder. Not confused or wary like in that last photo, but joyful again, the way he used to be. "I grew up in a house like this," I said quietly. "Before my parents died, before everything changed." I turned to face Nathan. "I know what this world looks like from the inside. The expectations, the scrutiny, the way people perform their lives for each other. Is that what you're asking me to do? Perform? In public, yes." He moved closer, his presence commanding attention even in this vast space. "In private, you can be whoever you want to be. But when we're out there..." He gestured toward the windows, toward the city beyond. "We play the role of a happily married couple. Devoted, stable, normal. There's nothing normal about this arrangement." "No," he agreed. "But it can appear normal. That's all that matters." I moved away from the windows, exploring the suite more thoroughly. The closet was a walk-in space bigger than my current bedroom, empty except for built-in shelving and hanging rods waiting to be filled. The bathroom had heated floors, multiple shower heads, luxury toiletries already stocked on the marble vanity. Every detail spoke of wealth beyond my current comprehension. "This is a lot to process," I said finally. 48 hours ago, I was scrubbing dishes in my studio apartment. Now you're offering me all of this, and I still don't completely understand why me specifically." Nathan was quiet for a moment, leaning against the doorframe with his arms crossed. "Do you remember the Meridian campaign? The one I mentioned last night?" "Of course. It was one of my best projects." I was considering investing in Meridian at the time. Part of my due diligence was reviewing their marketing materials, their brand positioning. Your work stood out, not just because it was technically excellent, but because it told a story. You understood that luxury isn't about the things themselves, but about the feeling they evoke, the fantasy they sell. He pushed off from the doorframe, moving closer. "That's what I need, Nora. Someone who understands how to craft and maintain a fantasy. Someone who can present the image of a perfect marriage while understanding it's all performance. You have the skills for this, even if you don't realize it. I'm a graphic designer, not an actress. You're a storyteller, he corrected. And right now, we need to tell the story of Nathan Cross, respectable family man. You're the co-author of that story. I sank onto the sofa, suddenly exhausted. The weight of the decision pressed down on me, enormous and inescapable. I need to know something else. The truth this time, no corporate speak. Are you a criminal? Is your money from illegal activities? Nathan sat in the chair across from me, his elbows resting on his knees as he leaned forward. I operate in gray areas. Some of my business partners have connections to organized crime, but those connections help me navigate difficult negotiations and protect my interests. I don't participate in violence or drug trafficking or anything that harms innocents. My money comes from legitimate real estate development, but the methods I use to secure deals aren't always conventional. That's not a no. That's the truth. I'm not a saint, Nora, but I'm not the monster Derek tried to paint you as either. I'm someone who operates in the real world, where success often requires compromises that idealists won't make. The honesty, brutal as it was, somehow made me trust him more than any polished denial would have. He wasn't trying to sell me a fantasy about who he was. He was presenting reality, letting me make an informed choice. If I do this, I said slowly, I need guarantees about Noah. The custody support isn't conditional on anything. Even if I leave after the minimum 90 days, you still help me get my son back. Already in the contract. And I need protection. Real protection. If there's danger, I need to know your security team is the best available. They are. Former military, law enforcement, the best in the business. And I need. I hesitated, then pushed forward. I need to know that you'll respect the boundaries we set. That separate lives means separate lives. I'm not interested in becoming your mistress or your toy or whatever else rich men expect from arrangements like this. Something flickered in Nathan's eyes. Respect, maybe, or approval. I have no interest in a reluctant partner, Nora. When and if anything physical happens between us, it will be because we both want it, not because of any obligation or expectation. The when and if suggested he thought it might happen eventually. I wasn't sure how I felt about that, whether the tiny flutter in my stomach was anxiety or something else entirely. I need 24 hours, I said. One more day to think, to make sure I'm not missing something obvious that will blow up in my face. Fair enough. Nathan stood, offering his hand to help me up from the sofa. Take the time you need. But Nora, I want you to understand something. This offer expires in 24 hours. After that, I move on to other candidates. So make sure whatever decision you reach is one you can live with. As his driver took me back to my apartment, I stared out the window at the city, at the ordinary people living their ordinary lives. I could be one of them again, struggling but authentic, poor but honest. Or I could step into Nathan Cross's world, into luxury and danger and performance. But only one of those choices led back to Noah. Only one path gave me the resources to fight for my son. And wasn't that worth any compromise? Wasn't Noah worth everything? By the time I reached my apartment, my decision was already made. I just needed one more night to make peace with it. I signed the contract at 9 a.m. the next morning, my hand surprisingly steady as I wrote my name on the designated line. Margaret Chen witnessed the signature, her expression professionally neutral as she notarized the document that would change my life. Nathan signed his own copy with the same controlled precision he seemed to apply to everything, transforming us from strangers into legal partners with a few strokes of ink. "Congratulations," Margaret said, closing her folder with a definitive snap. "Mrs. Cross." The name sent a jolt through me. Mrs. Cross. I was married now, at least on paper. The surreal quality of the moment made my head spin slightly, like I was watching this happen to someone else rather than living it myself. "The actual ceremony will take place this afternoon," Nathan said, checking his watch. "City Hall, private chamber. Just us, Margaret as witness, and the judge." I've arranged for appropriate clothing to be delivered to your apartment by noon." Of course he had. Nathan Cross didn't do anything halfway. What should I tell people? My landlord, my few clients, people who might ask questions. "Tell them you've reconciled with your ex-husband and are moving," Nathan said smoothly. "Once the marriage is official and you've moved in, we'll craft a different narrative for public consumption. Something more romantic, less sudden. And Derek, if he hears I'm married suddenly, he'll be suspicious. Let him be suspicious." Nathan's expression hardened. "Derek Morrison no longer has any power over your life. In fact, I'm having my team compile documentation of his sabotage of your career. If he causes problems, we'll respond appropriately." The casual way he discussed neutralizing Derek should have worried me more than it did. But after a year of being Derek's victim, the idea of having someone powerful in my corner felt less like a threat and more like relief. The rest of the morning passed in a blur. I returned to my apartment to find 3 garment bags hanging on my door, along with a box from an exclusive shoe boutique. Inside the first bag was a cream-colored dress. Simple but elegant, with a fitted bodice and flowing skirt that would photograph beautifully. The shoes were low heels in champagne satin, comfortable and classic. Even the undergarments had been selected, high-end pieces in my exact size. I showered with more care than usual, using the last of my good shampoo, the bottle I'd been rationing for weeks. My hair fell in damp waves around my shoulders, and I took extra time with makeup, trying to look like a woman entering a marriage rather than a business transaction. The face that looked back at me from the mirror was familiar but strange, someone caught between my old life and whatever came next. The dress fit perfectly, skimming my figure in a way that was both flattering and appropriate. I studied my reflection, turning to see how the fabric moved. I looked like a bride, not the elaborate white gown fantasy kind, but the understated, sophisticated version. Someone marrying for love rather than necessity. The lie of it made my stomach twist, but I pushed the feeling down. This was for Noah. Everything was for Noah. Nathan's car arrived at 1 p.m. I'd packed 2 suitcases with my essential belongings. Everything else could wait for the movers Nathan was arranging. My landlord had been surprisingly understanding when I'd given notice that morning, probably relieved to be rid of a tenant who'd been late with rent more than once. The drive to City Hall was quiet. Nathan sat beside me in the back seat, dressed in a charcoal suit that made him look like he'd stepped from a magazine spread. He'd brought a small bouquet of white roses, handing them to me without comment as we pulled up to the building. "For appearances," he said when I looked at him questioningly. "If anyone sees us, it should look right." The ceremony itself was brief and impersonal. The judge, a tired-looking woman in her 60s, read the required words in a monotone that suggested she'd performed this ritual thousands of times. I repeated my vows mechanically, the words feeling strange, and waited on my tongue. Nathan's responses were delivered with the same controlled precision he applied to business negotiations. "You may kiss the bride," the judge said without enthusiasm. Nathan's hand cupped my face gently, his thumb brushing my cheek as he leaned in. The kiss was soft, brief, appropriate for a government office. But something about the warmth of his mouth against mine, the solidness of his body close to mine, sent an unexpected flutter through my stomach. When he pulled back, his gray eyes held mine for a moment, unreadable. "Congratulations," the judge said, already preparing the next set of documents. "Marriage license will be processed within 3 business days." And just like that, I was married. Mrs. Nathan Cross, bound by law and contract to a man I barely knew, living a lie that somehow felt more real than anything in my life had felt for months. We went directly to the penthouse afterward. Nathan's security team was discreet but visible. 2 men in dark suits who took up positions by the elevator and entrance. Inside, my suitcases were already in my suite, the small amount of belongings I'd brought looking pathetic in that enormous space. "I'll have the movers collect the rest of your things tomorrow," Nathan said, loosening his tie. Make a list of anything you need for your suite. Furniture, electronics, whatever would make you comfortable. There's no budget. Just tell Maria what you want. Maria turned out to be a slim woman in her 40s who appeared from somewhere in the penthouse's depths, introducing herself as the house manager. She had warm brown eyes and a Spanish accent, her manner professional but kind. "Welcome, Mrs. Cross," she said, and I had to suppress the urge to correct her, to explain I wasn't really Mrs. Cross, just playing the part. "I've prepared dinner for 8 o'clock. Mr. Cross mentioned you prefer lighter fare, so I've made grilled salmon with vegetables. If you have dietary restrictions or preferences, please let me know." "That sounds perfect. Thank you." The normalcy of discussing dinner felt surreal after the morning's events. "Maria has been with me for 6 years," Nathan explained after she'd left. "She's trustworthy and discreet. She knows the nature of our arrangement and will respect your privacy." "How many people know this isn't real?" "Maria, Margaret, my head of security, Marcus, and my business partner, Vincent. That's all. Everyone else will believe we're a conventional couple." I walked to the windows, looking out at the park below. Sunset was still hours away, but the afternoon light cast everything in gold. People were jogging on the paths, children playing in the grass. Normal life happening below while I stood in this tower, living a fantasy. "I need to call my lawyer about Noah," I said. "Start the custody proceedings." "Already arranged." Nathan joined me at the window, maintaining a respectful distance. "Linda Watkins, the best family law attorney in the state. She's expecting your call tomorrow morning at 9. I've briefed her on the situation, provided all relevant financial documentation. She's confident we have a strong case." Just like that. I shook my head. A week ago I couldn't afford to return her phone calls. Now she's expecting me. "Money opens doors, Nora. You'll get used to it." I turned to face him. "Will I? Get used to this?" I gestured around the penthouse. "I feel like I'm playing dress-up in someone else's life." "You're not playing." His voice was firm. "This is your life now. These resources, this security, it's all real. You just need to accept it." Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, his expression darkening slightly. "I need to take this. Make yourself at home. Explore. Everything here is yours to use." He disappeared into his office, leaving me alone in the vast space. I wandered through the penthouse, cataloging details. The kitchen was equipped with appliances I'd only seen in magazines. The living room had a sound system that probably cost more than a car. Books lined built-in shelves, an eclectic mix of business texts, classic literature, and modern thrillers. Art hung on the walls, original pieces by artists I recognized from gallery visits in my old life. In the dining room, I found family photos on a sideboard. Nathan as a younger man, standing with an older couple who must be his parents. Another photo showed him with a beautiful dark-haired woman, both of them smiling, relaxed in a way I'd never seen him. A sister, maybe? Or an ex-girlfriend. "That's my sister, Elena." Nathan's voice came from behind me. I hadn't heard him return. "She died 4 years ago. Car accident." The pain in his voice, quickly suppressed, was the most emotion I'd heard from him. "I'm sorry. She would have liked you." He picked up the photo, studying it with an expression that seemed almost vulnerable. "Elena always said I needed someone who wouldn't take my bullshit, who'd call me out when I was being too controlling." "Was she right? Are you controlling?" "Probably." He set the photo down carefully. "But I'm trying to be better about it. This arrangement, it requires me to give you space I'm not naturally inclined to give." The admission surprised me. "Why? Why do you struggle with control?" "Because losing control means losing what matters." His gray eyes met mine. I learned that when Elena died. She was in that car because of me, because of threats against me that I didn't take seriously enough. After that, I swore I'd never leave anything to chance again. The vulnerability in his confession made my chest tighten. This was the real Nathan Cross, beneath the polished exterior. Someone who'd been hurt, who'd lost someone precious, who'd built walls of control to prevent further loss. "I'm sorry about your sister," I said softly. "But Nathan, you can't control everything. That's not how life works." "I can try." A ghost of a smile touched his lips. "And I have better success than most." Dinner that evening was surprisingly comfortable. Maria's salmon was perfectly prepared, the conversation flowing more easily than I'd expected. Nathan asked about my design work, seeming genuinely interested in the creative process. I found myself explaining color theory and typography choices, watching him absorb the information with the same focused attention he probably applied to real estate deals. "You miss it," he observed. "The work, the creativity." "I miss a lot of things." I set down my fork. "But mostly I miss feeling competent. I was good at what I did, Nathan. Really good. And Derek took that away, made everyone think I was a failure. Then we'll prove them wrong." He leaned back in his chair, wineglass in hand. "Once you're settled, once the custody situation is resolved, we'll rebuild your reputation. New portfolio, strategic projects, the right connections. You'll have your career back." "Why do you care? That's not part of our arrangement." "Consider it an investment in making you happy. A happy wife is a convincing wife." But something in his tone suggested it went deeper than that. "Besides, I hate waste. You have talent that should be used." After dinner, I retreated to my suite, exhausted from the emotional weight of the day. The bed was even more comfortable than it looked, the sheets soft against my skin. I should have felt strange, sleeping in a stranger's home, legally bound to a man I barely knew. But instead, I felt something close to peace. For the first time in over a year, I wasn't alone, wasn't fighting every battle solo. Nathan Cross might be dangerous, might operate in moral gray areas I'd always avoided, but he was on my side now, and that made all the difference. I was almost asleep when my phone buzzed with a message. "Nathan. Sleep well, Nora. Tomorrow we start reclaiming your life. All of it." I stared at the message for a long moment before typing a response. "Thank you for all of this." His reply came immediately. "Don't thank me yet. The hard part is just beginning." He was right, of course. We'd signed the contracts, said the vows, established the arrangement. But now came the real challenge, convincing the world we were in love, fighting the Sullivan family for custody, navigating Nathan's dangerous world while maintaining the illusion of normalcy. The hard part was absolutely just beginning. But as I drifted off to sleep in that enormous bed, in that beautiful room, with resources I'd only dreamed of at my disposal, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Hope. Linda Watkins had the kind of presence that filled a room despite her small stature. She sat across from me in her corner office, her steel gray hair cut in a sharp bob, her designer suit immaculate, radiating competence and controlled aggression. Behind her, law degrees from Yale and Columbia hung on the wall alongside photographs of her with various judges and politicians. "Mrs. Cross," she began, and I was still getting used to that name. "I've reviewed the documentation the Sullivan family submitted in the original custody case. Frankly, it's a hatchet job. They painted you as unstable, financially irresponsible, and emotionally incapable of providing proper care for Noah." I swallowed hard, the familiar shame washing over me. Most of that was because of my ex-partner Derek. He sabotaged my career, my reputation. "I'm aware." Linda tapped a thick folder on her desk. "Mr. Cross has provided extensive documentation of Mr. Morrison's campaign against you. We'll be using that to demonstrate that your financial difficulties were the result of targeted harassment, not personal failings. We'll also be presenting your current situation: stable marriage, secure housing, substantial financial resources. The contrast will be stark. Nathan sat beside me, his presence solid and reassuring. He'd been quiet during most of the meeting, letting Linda take the lead, but I could feel his attention on every detail. "What are our chances?" I asked, afraid of the answer. "Better than you might think." Linda leaned forward, her eyes sharp. The Sullivan family's case rested primarily on financial instability and lack of secure housing. Both of those issues are now resolved. You're married to one of the most successful developers in the city, living in a multi-million-dollar penthouse with more than adequate space for a child. James Sullivan's family will struggle to argue you can't provide for Noah. "But they'll try," Nathan said. It wasn't a question. "Oh, absolutely. They'll dig into your past, Mrs. Cross. They'll examine your marriage, looking for any evidence it's not legitimate. They'll question the speed of the relationship, suggest you're unstable for marrying so quickly after your divorce. They'll throw everything at the wall and see what sticks." My stomach nodded. What if they find out the truth, that this is an arrangement? They won't. Nathan's voice was firm. "As far as anyone knows, we've been quietly seeing each other for months. We kept it private to avoid complicating your custody case, but once we realized we wanted a future together, we didn't see the point in waiting." "Can we sell that story?" I looked between them. "It sounds convenient." "All true love stories sound convenient in retrospect," Linda said with a slight smile. "The key is believing it ourselves. When you're questioned, Mrs. Cross, you need to speak about your husband with genuine affection. No hesitation, no uncertainty. You fell in love, you got married, you're building a life together. That's the only truth that exists." Over the next 2 weeks, Linda put together our case with surgical precision. I was interviewed, evaluated, questioned by experts who would testify about my fitness as a mother. The home study was scheduled. A court-appointed investigator who would visit the penthouse, assess the environment, determine if it was suitable for a child. "Make sure Noah's room is perfect," Linda instructed. "Age-appropriate toys, books, safety measures in place. They need to see that you've prepared for him, that you're ready to be a full-time mother again." Nathan had given me carte blanche to design Noah's space. I spent hours selecting furniture, choosing a color scheme of soft blues and greens that I knew he'd love. Books filled the shelves, everything from picture books to early readers. A toy chest overflowed with carefully selected items, building blocks, art supplies, stuffed animals. The room looked like something from a magazine spread, perfect and inviting. "It's too much," I said to Nathan as we stood in the doorway, surveying the finished space. "He's going to think it's a dream. Maybe that's what he needs. A dream that's actually real." Nathan's hand rested briefly on my shoulder, a gesture that had become more common over the past weeks. Small touches that weren't required by our arrangement, but happened anyway. His hand on my back as we walked, his fingers brushing mine when he handed me things. The home study went well. The investigator, a middle-aged woman named Carol, spent 3 hours examining the penthouse, asking questions, observing how Nathan and I interacted. We'd rehearsed this, knew how to present ourselves as a united couple. But I was surprised by how natural it felt when Nathan pulled me close, when he spoke about our family, when he described the future we were supposedly building together. "You're good at this," I said after Carol left. "The performance. So are you." He poured us both wine, a celebratory gesture. She believed us completely. I could see it. Maybe because parts of it are real. The admission slipped out before I could stop it. Nathan's eyes sharpened, focusing on me with new intensity. "What parts?" I took a sip of wine, buying time to formulate my answer. The respect, the partnership, whatever else this arrangement is, we work well together. That's real. Yes. He moved closer, not touching, but near enough that I could feel his warmth. It is. The moment stretched between us, charged with something unspoken. Then Nathan's phone buzzed, breaking the tension. He checked it, his expression darkening. Problem? I asked. The Sullivans have filed a counter-motion. They're arguing that our marriage is fraudulent, that I coerced you into it to strengthen your custody case. Ice flooded my veins. Can they prove that? No. Nathan's jaw tightened. But they'll try. Linda's handling it, but we need to be more visible as a couple. Public appearances, social events. We need to demonstrate that this marriage is real and established. Which is how I found myself, 3 days later, walking into a charity gala on Nathan's arm, wearing a midnight blue gown that cost more than my first car. The event was at the Metropolitan Museum, the grand hall filled with New York's elite. Everywhere I looked, I saw wealth and power. Women dripping in diamonds, men in custom tuxedos discussing deals worth millions. Breathe, Nathan murmured in my ear. You belong here. I didn't feel like I belonged. Despite the expensive dress and professional styling, I felt like an imposter. But I plastered on a smile and allowed Nathan to guide me through the crowd, his hand possessive at my waist. Nathan, I heard congratulations are in order. A portly man with silver hair approached, champagne glass in hand. You finally tied the knot. I never thought I'd see the day. Robert, allow me to introduce my wife, Nora. Nathan's pride sounded genuine. Nora, this is Robert Chen. He owns half the commercial real estate in Midtown. A pleasure, Mrs. Cross. Robert's eyes assessed me with open curiosity. Where has Nathan been hiding you? We kept things quiet initially, I said, the practiced response flowing smoothly. But when you know, you know. How did you two meet? A woman in red appeared beside Robert, her smile sharp and interested. Nathan and I had prepared for this question, rehearsed the story until it felt real. Actually, we met at a restaurant, Nathan said. Nora was working there, and I was immediately struck by her. It took some persuading, but she eventually agreed to have coffee with me. A working girl. The woman's tone suggested this was somehow scandalous. How refreshing. Nora's a graphic designer, Nathan said, his voice cooling slightly. An exceptionally talented one. She's taking some time off, but she'll be returning to her career once things settle down. The protective edge in his voice surprised me. This wasn't part of the performance. This was genuine irritation at the woman's condescension. We circulated through the gala, Nathan introducing me to dozens of people whose names I immediately forgot. Business associates, city officials, socialites who eyed me with varying degrees of suspicion and curiosity. The conversations blurred together, variations on the same themes. Surprise at Nathan's marriage, questions about how we met, thinly veiled attempts to determine if I was worthy of him. You're doing beautifully, Nathan said during a quiet moment. We'd escaped to a balcony overlooking the museum's sculpture garden, the noise of the party muffled behind us. Everyone's convinced. Are they? I leaned against the railing, grateful for the cool air. Or are they just too polite to say what they're thinking? What do you think they're thinking? That I'm a gold digger, that you married beneath you, that this won't last. I turned to face him. They're not entirely wrong. They're completely wrong. His intensity startled me. You're not beneath me, Nora. If anything, I'm the one who doesn't deserve you. Nathan, I mean it. He moved closer, his hand coming up to cup my face. You could have anyone. Any man would be lucky to have you. And instead, you're stuck in this arrangement with me. The touch of his hand, warm and gentle against my skin, sent a shiver through me. I'm not stuck. I chose this. For Noah. Initially, yes, but I trailed off, unsure how to finish that sentence, because it was becoming harder to remember that this was purely transactional, harder to ignore the way my heart raced when Nathan looked at me, harder to pretend the small touches and intimate moments were just performance. We should get back inside, Nathan said, but he didn't move his hand. People will notice we're gone. Let them notice. The boldness in my voice surprised us both. Let them see that we can't keep our hands off each other. Isn't that what newlyweds do? Something heated flared in Nathan's eyes. Careful, Nora. You're playing with fire. Maybe I want to get burned. The kiss happened so naturally I couldn't say who initiated it. One moment we were staring at each other, the air thick with tension, and the next, his mouth was on mine, demanding and possessive. My hands found his shoulders, pulling him closer, and he responded by pressing me back against the railing, his body solid against mine. This wasn't like the chaste kiss at City Hall. This was real, raw, fueled by weeks of proximity and growing attraction we'd both been trying to ignore. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Nathan's expression was stunned. That wasn't part of the arrangement, he said roughly. No. I touched my lips, still feeling the phantom pressure of his. It wasn't. We should... He stopped, running a hand through his hair. We need to establish boundaries before this gets complicated. I think it's already complicated. Before he could respond, the balcony door opened. A woman stepped out, her expression turning sly when she saw us. Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt. You're not interrupting, Nathan said smoothly, his mask of control sliding back into place. We were just getting some air. Caroline, have you met my wife? The rest of the evening passed in a blur. We returned to the party, playing our roles perfectly. But something had shifted between us. The accidental touches felt more deliberate now. The practiced smiles held genuine warmth. When Nathan's hand rested on my lower back, I leaned into it instead of just tolerating it. By the time we returned to the penthouse, exhaustion had set in. I kicked off my heels in the foyer, groaning with relief. How do you do this regularly? My feet are killing me. You get used to it. Nathan loosened his bow tie, the gesture somehow intimate. You were incredible tonight, Nora. Everyone believed us completely. Did they? Or did we just convince ourselves? I moved toward my suite, needing distance to think clearly. Good night, Nathan. Nora, wait. He caught my hand, turning me back to face him. About what happened on the balcony. Was just us getting carried away, I finished. It doesn't have to mean anything. Doesn't it? His gray eyes searched mine. Because it felt like it meant something. My heart hammered against my ribs. Nathan, we agreed this was business. Separate lives, remember? I remember. I also remember every word of that contract, and there's nothing in it that says we can't change the terms if we both want to. And do you? Want to change them? He was silent for a long moment, his thumb tracing circles on my wrist. I don't know, but I know I'm tired of pretending to feel something I'm not allowed to actually feel. The confession hung between us, dangerous and thrilling. I should have pulled away, should have retreated to the safety of my suite and the clear boundaries we'd established. Instead, I stepped closer. What are you feeling, Nathan? Interested. His voice dropped lower. Invested. Possessive in ways that have nothing to do with our contract. That's dangerous. I know. He released my hand, stepping back. Which is why I'm letting you walk away right now. Because if you stay, if you tell me you feel even a fraction of what I'm feeling, everything changes. I stood there, torn between safety and risk, between the arrangement we'd agreed to and the possibility of something real. Finally, I made my choice. "Good night, Nathan." I turned toward my suite. "I'll see you in the morning." I didn't look back, didn't see his expression, but I felt his gaze on me until I closed my door, leaning against it with my heart racing. Everything was changing, whether I admitted it or not. The question was whether I was brave enough to let it. The custody hearing was scheduled for a Friday morning in late November. I woke before dawn, my stomach churning with anxiety that no amount of deep breathing could calm. Today would determine everything, whether Noah would remain trapped with the Sullivan family or finally come home to me. I showered mechanically, my hands shaking as I dried my hair. The suit Linda had selected hung on my closet door, a tailored navy ensemble that projected competence and stability. I dressed carefully, each button and zipper a small ritual to focus my scattered thoughts. When I emerged from my suite, I found Nathan already awake, dressed in one of his impeccable charcoal suits, 2 cups of coffee waiting on the kitchen counter. "Couldn't sleep either?" he asked, sliding one of the cups toward me. "Too nervous." I wrapped my hands around the warm mug, drawing comfort from the heat. What if they find a way to discredit us? What if the judge doesn't believe our marriage is real? Nathan moved around the counter to stand beside me, his hand settling on my shoulder with familiar warmth. Over the past month, these casual touches had become natural, expected even. The line between performance and reality had blurred so thoroughly I could no longer distinguish where one ended and the other began. They won't. We've done everything right. Linda's prepared an airtight case. His confidence should have reassured me, but I couldn't shake the knot of fear in my stomach. James will be there, his parents. They'll look at me like I'm nothing, like I'm the problem, the unstable one who doesn't deserve her own son. My voice cracked on the last word. Nathan turned me to face him, his gray eyes intense. "Listen to me. You are not nothing. You're a woman who fought her way back from impossible circumstances, who rebuilt her life from scratch, who loves her son enough to do whatever it takes to bring him home. That's not weakness, Nora. That's strength." The conviction in his voice made my throat tight. "When did you start believing that?" "I've always believed it. From the moment I saw you standing up to Derek on that street corner, refusing to cower despite having every reason to be afraid." His hands framed my face gently. "You're the strongest person I know." I leaned into his touch without thinking, the gesture as natural as breathing. "Thank you. For all of this. For giving me the resources to fight back. I'm not doing you a favor, Nora." Something vulnerable flickered in his expression. This stopped being just business for me weeks ago. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed. Linda, confirming she'd meet us at the courthouse in an hour. The moment shattered, reality intruding on the bubble we'd created. The courtroom was smaller than I'd imagined, wood-paneled and formal, with harsh fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. James sat on the opposite side with his parents, Theodore and Margaret Sullivan, both impeccably dressed, their faces set in expressions of righteous superiority. James wouldn't meet my eyes, his attention fixed on the legal pad in front of him. I hadn't seen my ex-husband in over a year. He looked older than I remembered, stress lines etched around his mouth and eyes. His mother's influence was evident in his expensive suit and perfectly styled hair. The man I'd once loved had become a puppet for his family's agenda. Linda sat beside me, her presence a bulwark against my anxiety. Nathan was on my other side, close enough that our shoulders touched. His proximity helped anchor me as the judge entered, and the proceedings began. Judge Patricia Hendricks was a stern-looking woman in her 60s, her reputation for fairness legendary in family court. She reviewed the case file with methodical precision before looking up at both parties. We're here to revisit custody arrangements for Noah Sullivan, age 4. Her voice was crisp, professional. Mrs. Cross, formerly Mrs. Sullivan, you're petitioning for joint custody with the goal of transitioning to primary custody. Mr. Sullivan and his family oppose this, citing concerns about stability. Ms. Watkins, you may present your case. Linda stood, commanding the room with practiced authority. Your Honor, my client's circumstances have changed dramatically since the original custody determination. She is now married to Nathan Cross, a successful businessman with substantial financial resources. She resides in a secure, appropriate home environment with dedicated space for Noah. She has resumed her career as a graphic designer and has steady income. All the factors that previously influenced the court's decision have been resolved. She presented documentation with surgical precision, bank statements showing my new financial stability, photographs of Noah's room in the penthouse, character references from Nathan's business associates, the home study report that had been glowing in its assessment. The Sullivan family's attorney, a sharp-faced man named Robert Brennan, countered immediately. Your Honor, Ms. Cross's sudden marriage raises serious questions. She went from financial instability to luxury living in a matter of weeks by marrying a man she barely knew. This suggests instability of a different kind. Impulsive decision-making, possible ulterior motives, a pattern of using relationships for financial gain. The accusation hit like a physical blow. I felt Nathan tense beside me, his hand finding mine under the table, squeezing gently. Ms. Watkins, Judge Hendricks looked at Linda expectantly. My client's marriage is legitimate and based on genuine affection, Linda said smoothly. Mr. and Mrs. Cross met months before they married. They kept their relationship private initially to avoid complicating these very proceedings. When they decided to commit to each other, they saw no reason to delay. This is hardly unusual behavior for adults in love. I'd like to hear from Mrs. Cross directly. The judge's gaze settled on me. Mrs. Cross, please take the stand. My legs felt weak as I stood, making my way to the witness box. The bailiff administered the oath, and I promised to tell the truth, the whole truth. The irony wasn't lost on me. I was about to lie under oath about the fundamental nature of my marriage. Linda approached first, her questions designed to let me tell my story. I explained how Nathan and I had met, how he'd supported me as I struggled to rebuild my life, how we'd fallen in love despite the complicated circumstances. The lies flowed smoothly, rehearsed until they felt like truth. Then Brennan stood for cross-examination, and I braced myself. Mrs. Cross, you claim you and Mr. Cross met months ago, yet there's no record of you two being seen together before your sudden marriage. No photographs, no witnesses, nothing to corroborate your story. We were private, I said, keeping my voice steady. Nathan has a high profile. We wanted to keep our relationship out of the public eye. Convenient. Brennan's smile was sharp. Tell me, how long were you dating before he proposed? 3 months. And how long between the proposal and the wedding? 2 weeks. I saw where he was going with this. When you're certain, you don't need to wait. Or when you're desperate for financial resources to fund a custody battle, you don't need to wait. He let the implication hang. Isn't it true that you married Mr. Cross specifically to improve your standing in this case? No. The denial was automatic, but he pressed harder. You expect this court to believe that a wealthy, successful man like Nathan Cross happened to fall in love with you, a woman in financial ruin with no prospects, purely by coincidence, just as you needed resources to fight for custody. Linda objected, but the damage was done. The question painted me as a calculating gold digger, our marriage as a convenient fiction. I looked at Nathan, sitting at our table with his expression carefully controlled. This was the moment everything could fall apart. Objection sustained, Judge Hendricks said. Mr. Brennan, rephrase. Mrs. Cross, what attracted you to Mr. Cross? The question should have been easy. I'd prepared answers about his intelligence, his kindness, his strength. But sitting there under oath, being accused of using Nathan, something in me rebelled against the practiced lies. Everything, I said quietly. His integrity. The way he treats people with respect regardless of their status. How he sees potential in others when everyone else sees failure. He gave me a chance when no one else would. Not because he pitied me, but because he believed I deserved it. The truth of those words resonated through me. Somewhere along the way, the arranged marriage had become something else. The man I'd agreed to use for resources had become someone I genuinely admired, respected, maybe even loved. He makes me want to be better, I continued, my voice strengthening. Braver. He reminds me of who I used to be before life knocked me down. And yes, his resources help with this custody battle. But I didn't marry him for money. I married him because being with him makes me believe I can be the mother Noah deserves. The courtroom was silent. Brennan looked momentarily thrown by my emotional honesty. Linda was nodding slightly, satisfied. And Nathan, when I looked at him, something raw and unguarded shone in his gray eyes. No further questions, Brennan said, recovering his composure. Judge Hendricks called for a brief recess. In the hallway, Nathan pulled me aside, away from the others. That wasn't part of the script, he said quietly. I know, I'm sorry if I... Don't apologize. He cupped my face, his thumbs brushing my cheeks. That was perfect. Real. Exactly what the judge needed to hear. It was real, I admitted. All of it. His expression shifted, something intense and possessive replacing his usual control. Nora... Mrs. Cross? Linda appeared. Professional mask in place, but approval in her eyes. We're resuming. The second half of the hearing focused on Noah's best interests. James finally spoke, his testimony wooden and clearly coached by his parents. He claimed to want what was best for Noah, but offered nothing specific about our son's needs, preferences, or personality. He was going through motions, playing a role his family had assigned. Margaret Sullivan took the stand, her testimony dripping with condescension. She painted me as unstable, manipulative, unfit. But Linda dismantled her arguments systematically, pointing out that all of Margaret's concerns were based on circumstances that no longer existed. The question before this court, Linda said in her closing statement, is simple. Does Noah deserve to have a relationship with his mother? A woman who loves him deeply, who has fought against impossible odds to create a stable home for him, who has never stopped advocating for his well-being? The answer is obviously yes. Judge Hendricks took less than an hour to deliberate. When she returned, her expression was unreadable. I've reviewed all the evidence and testimony, she began. The court recognizes that Mrs. Cross's circumstances have indeed changed substantially. She has demonstrated financial stability, secure housing, and emotional maturity. The home study was exemplary. My heart hammered so hard I thought everyone could hear it. However, the judge continued, given the drastic nature of these changes and the short timeline, the court is proceeding cautiously. I'm ordering a transition period. Mrs. Cross will have supervised visitation twice weekly for 1 month. Assuming those visits go well, we'll progress to unsupervised weekend visits. After 3 months, we'll reconvene to assess whether joint custody is appropriate. It wasn't everything I'd hoped for, but it was more than I'd had. Tears blurred my vision as relief crashed over me. I was going to see Noah. In just days, I'd hold my son again. Thank you, I whispered to the judge. Thank you so much. Outside the courthouse, Nathan pulled me into his arms, holding me as I cried tears of relief and joy. You did it, he murmured against my hair. You're getting him back. We did it, I corrected, pulling back to look at him. I couldn't have done this without you. Yes, you could have. You would have found a way. His hand traced my jaw. But I'm glad I got to help. Linda approached, satisfaction evident in her smile. Excellent outcome, Mrs. Cross. We'll continue building the case for joint custody. I expect within 6 months, Noah will be with you permanently. 6 months. Half a year until my son came home. It felt like forever and no time at all. The first visit was scheduled for the following week. I spent the intervening days in a state of nervous anticipation, preparing myself to see Noah after 3 months apart. Would he remember me? Would he be happy to see me, or confused and withdrawn? When the day finally arrived, Nathan drove me to the supervised visitation center himself. You've got this, he said as we pulled into the parking lot. Just be yourself. He loves you. The visitation room was designed to be child-friendly, with toys and books and comfortable seating. I arrived early, my hands trembling as I waited. The supervisor, a kind-looking woman named Sandra, reviewed the rules with me. Then the door opened, and James walked in holding Noah's hand. My son had grown. His dark hair was longer, his face thinner. More of the little boy he was becoming visible through the baby features I remembered. He wore a Spider-Man shirt I'd never seen, shoes I hadn't bought, evidence of the life he was living without me. Noah, I breathed, dropping to my knees. Baby, it's Mommy. He stared at me for a long moment, uncertainty in his dark eyes. Then recognition dawned, and his face lit up. Mommy! He launched himself into my arms, and I caught him, holding him tight as tears streamed down my face. He smelled different. New shampoo, different detergent. But underneath was still my Noah, my baby, my heart walking around outside my body. I missed you so much, I whispered, covering his face with kisses. Every single day. I missed you too. His small hands patted my cheeks. Where did you go? Grandma said you were on a trip. I had to take care of some things, but I'm back now, and I'm never leaving again. James cleared his throat uncomfortably. I'll be back in an hour. He left without another word, and good riddance. That hour flew by too fast. We played with blocks, read books, drew pictures. Noah chattered constantly, telling me about preschool and his friends and the dog next door. He asked about my house, whether he could visit, when he'd see me again. Very soon, I promised. And yes, you can visit my house. You have your own room there, buddy. With toys and books and everything. His eyes widened. My own room? At your house? Yes, you're going to love it. When James returned to collect him, Noah clung to me, crying that he didn't want to leave. It broke my heart to let him go, but Sandra assured me this was normal, that consistency would help. You did wonderfully, she told me after they'd left. He clearly adores you. I'll be writing a very positive report. I called Nathan from the parking lot, my emotions overwhelming. It went well. I managed through tears. He remembered me. He was so happy to see me. Of course he was. You're his mother. Nathan's voice was warm. Come home, Nora. Tell me everything. Home. The penthouse had become that without me noticing. Not just where I lived, but home. And Nathan, the man I'd married for convenience, had become something more. Someone I turned to instinctively, who I wanted to share my joys and fears with. Over the following weeks, the visits continued, each one precious. Noah grew more comfortable, the confusion fading as routine established itself. On the third visit, he asked again about my house, about when he could see his room. Very soon, I promised. The judge is going to let you come visit soon. True to Judge Hendricks's order, after a month of successful supervised visits, Noah was approved for weekend visits to the penthouse. The first time he walked through our door, his eyes went huge at the space, the view, the luxury that had become my normal. "Whoa," he breathed. "Mommy, is this a castle?" "Something like that." I laughed, my heart so full it hurt. "Want to see your room?" His reaction to the bedroom I'd prepared was everything I'd hoped for. He ran from toy to toy, book to book, exclaiming over each discovery. When he found the stuffed elephant I'd bought, the same kind he'd had as a baby, he hugged it tight, his expression melting into contentment. "Can I stay here forever?" he asked. "Soon, baby. Very soon." Nathan had made himself scarce for the first visit, giving Noah and me space to reconnect. But by the third weekend, my son was asking about Mommy's friend in the big house. "That's Nathan," I explained. "He lives here too." "Is he nice?" "Very nice. Do you want to meet him?" Noah nodded shyly, and I called Nathan from his office. He approached my son with careful respect, crouching down to Noah's level. "Hey there, Noah. I'm Nathan. Your mom has told me a lot about you." "She has?" Noah looked between us uncertainly. "Yeah. She says you're very smart and you love dinosaurs." Noah's face brightened. "I do. I have a T-Rex toy, but I left it at Dad's house." "Well, I might know where to find one here." Nathan winked at me. "Want to help me look?" He led Noah on a treasure hunt through the penthouse, mysteriously discovering a new T-Rex toy in the process. By the time they returned, my son was chattering happily, all shyness gone. "Mommy, Nathan's really cool," Noah announced. "He knows all about dinosaurs." "Does he?" I smiled at Nathan over Noah's head. "That's very cool." That evening, after Noah was asleep in his room, Nathan and I sat in the living room with glasses of wine. "You're good with him," I said. "Natural." "He's a great kid. You've done an amazing job raising him, despite everything. I couldn't have gotten him back without you." I set down my wine, turning to face Nathan fully. "I need to tell you something. This arrangement we made, this marriage, it's changed. At least for me." His expression grew intense, watchful. "Changed how?" "I'm not performing anymore, Nathan. When I touch you, when I smile at you, when I tell people I'm lucky to have you, none of that is fake. I don't know exactly when it happened, but somewhere along the way, I fell for you. Really fell." The confession hung between us, vulnerable and terrifying. Nathan was silent for so long I thought I'd made a terrible mistake. Then he moved, closing the distance between us, his hands framing my face as he kissed me with an intensity that stole my breath. "Finally," he murmured against my lips. "I've been waiting for you to figure it out." "You knew." I hoped. He pulled back just enough to meet my eyes. "I fell for you that first night, watching you stand up to Derek despite being terrified. Every day since has only made it worse. Better. I don't even know anymore. I just know I don't want this to be pretend." "It's not." I kissed him again, pouring everything I felt into it. "It's real. All of it." We moved to his bedroom that night, the boundaries we'd carefully maintained dissolving like mist. Being with Nathan felt inevitable, right, like coming home after a long journey. Afterward, lying in his arms with moonlight streaming through the windows, I felt peace settle over me. "I love you," I whispered, the words terrifyingly real. His arms tightened around me. "I love you too, more than I thought I could love anyone." 6 months after the first custody hearing, Judge Hendricks granted joint custody. Noah would split his time between James's house and ours, with the understanding that I'd pursue primary custody once he started kindergarten. It wasn't perfect. I wanted my son with me full time. But it was progress. Real, tangible progress. My design career had been rebuilt slowly, but surely. Nathan's connections opened doors. but my talent kept them open. I had clients again, projects I was excited about, the creative fulfillment I'd lost. Derek had disappeared from my life completely. Whatever Nathan had done to neutralize him, it worked. I didn't ask for details, accepting that some aspects of Nathan's world would remain shadowed. One evening, almost a year after our arrangement began, Nathan found me in my studio, the spare bedroom we'd converted into a workspace. I was finishing a logo design, absorbed in perfecting the color balance. "Working late again?" He came up behind me, his hands settling on my shoulders. "Almost done." I saved the file and spun the chair to face him. "What's up?" He held out a small box, his expression nervous in a way I'd rarely seen. "I have something for you." Inside was a ring. Not the practical wedding band I wore from our courthouse ceremony, but something exquisite, a deep blue sapphire surrounded by diamonds, elegant and unique. "Nathan." "I know we're already married," he said quickly. "But that was business. This is me asking you for real. Will you be my wife, Nora? Not because of a contract or an arrangement, but because we love each other?" Tears blurred my vision. "We're already married, you idiot." "So that's a yes?" "That's an enthusiastic yes." I pulled him down for a kiss. "To everything. Forever." He slid the ring onto my finger beside the original band, the contrast between them a perfect metaphor for our journey, from transaction to transformation, from necessity to choice. That night, with Noah asleep in his room and Nathan beside me in our bed, I thought about how far I'd come. From desperate and alone to loved and secure, from enemy at the door to partner facing the world. My ex had shouted at me on that street corner, demanding to know who I'd marry, who'd be desperate enough to take me on. He couldn't have imagined this, that I'd marry a man who saw past my circumstances to my worth, who'd bet on me when no one else would, who'd become my partner in every sense of the word. "What are you thinking?" Nathan asked, his fingers tracing patterns on my shoulder. That Derek asked me who I was going to marry. He had no idea I was already the mafia boss's wife. Nathan laughed, the sound rumbling through his chest. "Former mafia connections. I'm mostly legitimate now." "Mostly?" "I'm a work in progress." He kissed my temple. "But I'm your work in progress." "Lucky me," I murmured, settling deeper into his embrace. And the strange thing was, I meant it. I was lucky. Not because of the money or the penthouse or the resources, but because I'd found a partner who saw me, truly saw me, and chose to stand beside me through everything. My ex had been wrong about so much, but he'd been right about one thing. I had married someone extraordinary who'd helped me reclaim not just my son, but myself. And that made all the difference.